When we talk about liberalism, we're talking about a political and a moral philosophy. The people who are its proponents, they say that it's built on liberty and equality. So what liberals say is they espouse a wide variety of views depending on their understanding of principles. Like I said, it's a philosophy, it's a worldview, it's how you think. So generally, they support the concept of civil rights, democracy, secularism, gender equality, racial equality, internationalism, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Now I know most of us are listening to these words and thinking, what's wrong with that? We'll get there. For those of us that are old enough to remember when the US invaded Afghanistan. Why did they invade Afghanistan? What was the reason? It was the empowerment of women. The Taliban are not letting the women get an education. The Taliban are not letting the women walk in the streets like they used to. And they would show pictures from the 1940s and the 1950s of Afghani women in skirts walking around freely. We need to save these women. Tell them, women in this country, you need to save your sisters. The way that you are living here, don't you want them to have the same? It's a culture war. It's a philosophy that they want to spread. If you don't want to adopt it on your own, if you as a Muslim people do not want to adopt our philosophy on your own, then we will bring it to you with the excuse of women, LGBT, and the excuse of the intolerance that you have in your lands. Liberalism by its core is meant for everyone. Therefore, everyone must accept it. And if there are people that aren't, then that is a threat to their core identity. And they need to find a way to get rid of it. They want you to take on the philosophy of liberalism. And in doing that, you will leave the philosophy that Islam brings with it. You have to adopt what we believe in as far as freedoms go. It's our ideology that we should be free to say whatever we want. So you need to let us curse the Prophet ﷺ. Because if you don't, then you are backwards. You are not liberal. You are not meant for the 21st century. This is what you're being converted to. You can have Muhammad ﷺ. He was a great man. But, you know, he shouldn't have done what he did to Banu Qurayza. No one did in history what he did. But he shouldn't have married Aisha. Look at the Jews. Historically, the Jews were hated in Europe. They were blamed for all kinds of problems. They were the scapegoat. Something went bad, the Jews. We have a plague, the Jews. There's a recession, the Jews. This is what they did with them. No matter how long they stayed in Europe, no matter how much they tried to be European, they were still the other. They were anti-Semitic. But historians tell us, and we know, the Semites are Jews and who else? And the Arabs. The Semites are the Jews and the Arabs. The same way that they held bad feelings towards the Jews, they held it towards the Arabs as well. And for them, there's no difference between an Arab and a Muslim from another land. So the Jews could never escape their origin. Meaning no matter how European they became, they still were in origin, in culture, in background, they remained Jewish to them. They were always the other. Israeli psychologists, they wrote about Zionism that the Zionists were very clever. When they started petitioning Europe for the state of Israel, one of the tactics that they used is that they tried to convince the Europeans, and they were successful in doing this, that we are one of you. And the Semites that you dislike, those are the Palestinians. Right? The Semites are two people. They're the Jews and the Arabs. So what they did is they said the Semites are two people. They're two groups. In reality, the group that you dislike, that's the Semites, those are the Arabs. That's Palestine. But the Jews, the Semites that you should like, that's us. We're the Jews. You should like us. We're like you. We believe in democracy. We're Western just like you are. In fact, most Jews today are secularist. So even in philosophy, they're just like they are. But the Palestinians? No, these guys are backwards. These guys still believe in Tawheed. They still believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Israeli psychologists point out that one of the amazing things that the Zionists did is that they convinced Europe that they were one of them. And they convinced Europe that the real Semites are the Arabs. These are the ones you should be against.